Unbelievable transformation. Mafia boss discovers unexpected love after a shocking betrayal. Tony Romano leaned against the cold brick wall of a dimly lit alley, the grit of Brooklyn lingering around him like a familiar scent he couldn't shake. He looked down the street, replaying the bitter realization that Anton, his most trusted lieutenant, had sold him out. The weight of betrayal clenched at his gut, smothering the familiar bravado that came with being a feared mafia boss. Riddled with questions that gnawed at him like relentless vermin, had he let his guard down? Was loyalty just an illusion? The stakes escalated with his internal struggle, a war waged within the confines of his own battered heart. Navigating these unforgiving streets, a world he thought he knew, Tony felt as if his sharp edges were beginning to dull. He had survived countless confrontations, but the ache from Anton's betrayal resonated deeper than any bullet wound. A creeping sensation of emptiness gnawed at Tony's core. Could it be that he was not the titan he thought he was? A man who ruled through fear but never quite grasped the essence of loyalty beyond his family. And yet, even amid this turmoil, the overwhelming desire to protect his empire thrummed within him. As the shadows cloaked the dilapidated buildings surrounding him, he caught sight of Mia. She exuded an aura of warmth and resilience, a stark contrast to the coldness of his world. Their conversations danced tenuously over questions of right and wrong, hope and despair. "Why do you do this to your community?" she pressed at their first encounter, her eyes burning with intensity. He could feel the turmoil in his chest knot tighter, her accusations challenging every justification he carved out for his ruthless life. She was different, and that scared him. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Their dialogue evolved into a deeper connection, unraveling layers of Tony's hardened exterior. With each talk, Mia drew closer, and the more she revealed about her father's unjust imprisonment, the more Tony felt the churning in his stomach: guilt, remorse, confusion. He could see the pain etched in her expression and, for the first time, it struck him, what if he was more than just a name in the grimy world of power and corruption? What if this chance meeting was an opportunity to reshape his legacy? Fear rushed through him, each heart-stopping moment vibrating against his ribs like a drum. As he stood at this precipice, Tony's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, a battlefield of love and loyalty, strength and vulnerability. Every thought pushed him to confront his family, an act that could shred his empire to pieces. The emotional pressure coiled tighter. He could either follow the brutal expected path of vengeance or explore the uncharted territory of redemption, risking everything for a chance at something pure with Mia. Just as he was ready to make a decision, a hard shove from behind sent him sprawling. The air thickened with tension, and everything he thought he knew was about to crack. In that moment, he questioned his ability to embrace even the flicker of light that Mia represented. As he braced for a violent confrontation that could shatter everything, the damning question echoed louder than ever: was he capable of breaking free from the shadows? Would he dare to reach for the light or fade back into darkness? The impact sent Tony crashing to the ground, the alley's gravel biting into his palms as he quickly scrambled to regain his footing. Panic flooded his veins, electrifying every muscle as he spun around to face his attacker. Anton stood there, his face twisted in a sneer that matched the venom in his voice. "Did you really think you could run this city without consequences, Tony?" Anton's words dripped with disdain, sharp enough to cut through the fog of Tony's conflicted heart. Every instinct urged Tony to retaliate, to unleash the anger simmering beneath the surface. But as he stared into Anton's cold eyes, filled with betrayal and a twisted sense of righteousness, Tony felt a flicker of clarity. This confrontation, born out of treachery, could either bury him under the weight of his past mistakes or propel him toward a future he had yet to imagine. "Why, Anton? Why now?" Tony's voice was steady despite the chaos swirling around him. "Because you've become weak, Tony. You've let emotion cloud your judgment. Your empire is crumbling, and it's time for someone with real vision to take command." Anton stepped closer, a predator closing in on his prey. But instead of fear, a surge of anger propelled Tony forward. The fear of losing everything he had worked for fused with the yearning for something greater than power and control. You think you're doing me a favor? You're as blind as the rest of them. This is not just about power, it's about building something real, not just fear, he shot back, his tone unwavering. Tony felt the jolt of confrontation snap him into focus, a reminder of who he was beneath the facade of the ruthless Mafia boss. This moment presented a critical choice: to fight against Anton and reaffirm his dominion, or to rethink what leadership truly meant. The clash of wills unfolded, each word a volley in their mental battle. As Anton lunged forward, Tony sidestepped, using his years of training not merely to defend, but to gain distance, an opportunity to contemplate a different approach. In the split second it took for him to evade Anton, he realized that this encounter wasn't solely about retaliation. It was an awakening. Joining forces with Mia was not an act of weakness or betrayal to his family, it was a step toward healing the fractures in his life. He didn't need to be the monster that Anton painted him to be, he could forge a new identity rooted in integrity. The brief exchange sent shockwaves through Antonio's mind, leading him to question his loyalty to a life that had brought him nothing but isolation. Would drawing blood ultimately fuel the cycle of violence, or could he choose collaboration and connection? Enough, he bellowed, finally regaining control of the situation. He leveled a steely gaze at Anton. You've made your choice. But I refuse to be your puppet. You may have the upper hand now, but I will find my way back. And when I do, it'll be with purpose. With those words, he turned and dashed away, still fueled with adrenaline and a burgeoning sense of determination. The alley transformed from a hollow prison of shadows to a pathway towards something uncharted but promising. As he navigated the dark streets of Brooklyn, a mix of dread and hope pulsated through him, igniting a quiet resolve nestled in his heart. He envisioned a meeting with Mia, one where he could open up about his struggle without the weight of his past actions suffocating him. He was ready to chase the light she symbolized, to not only redefine his legacy but possibly save what remained of his humanity. But first, he needed to confront the demons lurking in the corners of his mind. The moment Tony turned to face the opening of the alley, poised to reclaim his destiny, he caught a glimpse of Anton watching from the shadows. It was a knowing look, a premonition that this battle was far from over. With every heartbeat echoing a sense of urgency, he pressed forward, a fire kindling within him. The time had come to face his darkest fears, both external and internal. The very essence of his transformation lay ahead, but would it be too late to piece together the fragments of his soul? Tony sprinted through the dimly lit streets, each step resonating with his heartbeat, a rhythmic reminder that he was still alive, still in control at least for now. The distance he created from Anton grew more comforting with each fleeting moment. But shadows loomed large, both in the physical world and within the cavern of his mind. His past tripped him up like invisible wires, forcing him to confront the truth he had been running from for too long. He headed toward the small cafe where he and Mia had first discussed their plans. It had become a sanctum for them, a place where ambition intersected with possibility. But as he arrived, the cafe stood empty, its neon lights flickering in the almost oppressive silence. A weight pressed against his chest, a reminder of the gravity of every choice he had made. Would she be there? Would she even want to see him after all that had transpired? In that moment, the overwhelming force of doubt surfaced once again. Was he merely a fool, battering down the walls around her heart due to his own desperate need for redemption? But as he wiped the sweat from his brow and pushed through the door, he knew he had to try. He had to confront the raw truth of his own existence, the tumultuous knots of a life riddled with choices that defined him as much as they confined him. He spotted her sitting at a table in the far corner, her head buried in a book that looked familiar. The memory of their conversations about hope and new beginnings flooded his mind. But now, surrounded by the silence of his hesitation, he felt lost. Was he the man who could cultivate dreams, or had he become too ensnared by his own failures? Mia, he breathed as he approached, his voice tinged with vulnerability that felt foreign to him. Startled, she looked up, her eyes widening with a mixture of surprise and scrutiny. For a moment, the world fell away. Time suspended itself as unspoken words hung between them like fragile glass. "What are you doing here, Tony?" The natural coolness of her tone only intensified the fire flickering in his chest. "I need to talk," he replied, taking a seat across from her, the tension palpable. "About what happened, and everything else." Aware of the knot tightening in his stomach, he felt a rush of urgency to explain himself, to lay bare the tumult within him, an urge to be honest not just with Mia, but with himself. He had often used power and manipulation to navigate life's challenges, but in that cafe light, he understood glaringly that genuine connection required a different strategy, one starkly vulnerable. Mia studied him, her body language shifting yet guarded. "Is this about Anton? You don't have to protect me from this, protect you." "No, it's about me. I've realized something crucial." He steadied himself, forcing the words out. "I've been driven by fear, anger, and a misguided sense of dominion. But I don't want that to define me anymore. I've had enough of the darkness chasing me. Without you, I feel even less of who I could be." Her eyes softened, and for the briefest moment, the walls around them seemed to crumble. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to reconnect, to show her that his intentions were sincere and rooted in change. But would she accept a Tony who stood in the light, stripped of his armor? As the vulnerability of their conversation deepened, he noticed thousands of questions brewing in her expression. Each held a mirror to his fears that grappling with the past could unravel the thread of connection they had spun together. Mia leaned back, crossing her arms as though guarding her heart, but beneath her stoic demeanor lay an opening. The room pulsed with unspoken potential, but the risk of rejection loomed just as heavily. "Are you willing to show me who you really are?" she finally asked, challenge glinting in her eyes. Tony felt the weight of her words sink in. This was his chance to rebuild what he once shattered, to engage genuinely. Yet with each ounce of hope surged an underlying tension. "Because I can't just give you my trust without proof that you'll stand by it," she continued, and Tony's heart raced. The time had come for action, a true commitment to his newfound purpose. And just when he thought he might reveal what he feared most, the remnants of his violent life, an unmistakable shadow flickered at the window, a reminder that Anton's South influence loomed perilously close. With blood pounding in his ears and resolve hardening within, he realized the confrontation was far more complex than he had anticipated. Would he falter under pressure, or would he seize the moment to prove not just to Mia, but to himself that transformation was possible despite the odds stacked against him? He would have to summon every ounce of courage he possessed in the moments ahead, not only to confront Anton, but to unveil the depths of his ambition and vulnerability to the person who mattered most. The true test was upon him. The battle for his soul had only just begun. The cafe was muted, yet it buzzed with a suspenseful energy as Tony sat across from Mia. Every glance between them became charged with untold stories and unresolved emotions. He could feel the weight of her skepticism mingling with the shimmer of possibility. It was a delicate balance, one that required both honesty and resolve. He clenched his fists underneath the table, the moment pressing in heavy on him. "Mia," he began again, grounding himself in her gaze. "I know I've messed up. I've used power and intimidation as my tools instead of something worthwhile. But I am trying to change. I want to learn how to be better, not just for you, but for myself." She leaned forward slightly, her curiosity piqued but still shrouded in caution. "What steps are you planning to take, Tony?" "Change isn't just a declaration, it's an action." A knot twisted in his stomach at the challenge in her tone. To articulate his intentions felt both terrifying and liberating. "I've started by distancing myself from people who enable the worst parts of me, like Anton. I want more than just power, I want respect. I want to be a better man, not just for you, but for everyone around me." Tony took a deep breath, grounding himself while confronting his own stark reflection. What did it mean to redefine his worth? As he spoke, he felt his heart pounding with the rhythm of an internal revolution. He had built his life around fear, wielding it like a weapon, but now he wanted to reshape that into something constructive, a shield against the darkness that had haunted him. Mia's expression softened just a fraction, but it wasn't enough. "Talk is easy, Tony. I need to see you actually doing this. How do I know you won't revert to your old ways when the pressure mounts? I know I can't offer guarantees, he replied, his voice firm yet vulnerable. But I know enough about myself to recognize my patterns. I'm learning to seek help, to confront my past rather than run from it. I won't let my old self dictate who I choose to be anymore. Each word felt like an excavation of buried feelings, raw, painful, yet somehow necessary. He caught himself considering what it meant to step out of the shadows, to expose his truth to someone who could shred his very being with disappointment. Mia wrinkled her brow as though trying to process the weight of his declaration. And if you fail? What then? Will you just go back to your life, shrug it off as if it meant nothing? No, he said with a fierce determination. There are stakes involved now. It's not just about me anymore, it's about standing up for the kind of person I want to be. Every failure will teach me. I'm ready to learn from my mistakes, not avoid them. As they locked eyes, Tony sensed a shared vulnerability threading between them, hesitant but electric. For the first time, he felt a flicker of hope sparking through the chamber of his heart. Was he truly worthy of a second chance? The thought both exhilarated and terrified him. Before Mia could respond, the door jingled, and a chill rushed through him as Anton's figure came into view. Tony's gaze shifted from Mia's to the doorway, and instinctively, his body tensed. You think he won't come for you? He murmured, seeking reassurance from Mia while the realization sank in deeper. You think he'll just let me go? I don't know, Mia replied, her voice low. But if you want this, if you want us, you'll have to stand against him, Tony. You can't just walk away and hope he disappears. At that moment, the noise in the cafe faded, the clamor of utensils and muffled conversations swallowed whole by the gravity of their reality. Tony felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. He had been a pawn for too long, but now, a growing determination began to fill him. It was time to face Anton, not just for Mia but for himself. Rising abruptly from the table, he locked eyes with Mia. Then I'll confront him. It's time I take control not just of him, but of my life. Did he have the strength to change his fate? He could feel the moment spiraling toward ignition. This wasn't merely an external conflict, it was a battle for the alignment of his very essence. With each step of resolve pounding against the cafe floor on his way out, Tony realized he was not just about to face Anton. He was about to confront an entire legacy, a legacy that had built walls forged in conflict but now had to be dismantled to grasp the potential of a life lived authentically. Would breaking those walls lead him into the light, or would they collapse upon him? Tony stepped out of the cafe, the cool air wrapping around him like a protective shield. The confidence that surged within him battled the fear left in the wake of his decision. Each breath was heavy with possibility as he stepped onto the city sidewalk, the bright lights almost blinding against the backdrop of his turbulent thoughts. How had he allowed himself to be swept up in Anton's web of intimidation for so long? The familiar gnawing at the corner of his mind threatened to pull him back into the depths of self-doubt. But now, with Mia's faith wavering like a candle in the storm, he had to prove to himself and to her that transformation was within reach. His phone buzzed in his pocket, startling him. It was a message from Mia. I believe in you. Remember who you want to become. The weight of her words pressed against the fear lingering in his mind, injecting a surge of purpose through his veins. With firm resolve, Tony headed toward Anton's usual haunt, a dimly lit bar nestled within the city's pulse. The clang of glasses and muffled laughter filled the air as he crossed the threshold, only to be met with the oppressive gaze of Anton's cronies. Would stepping into the lion's den lead to his downfall, or would it mark the beginning of his reclamation? He scanned the room, finally spotting Anton lounging in a secluded corner, laughter spilling from his mouth like poison. Tony marched up to him, the sound of his footsteps echoing alongside the racing of his heart. Every ounce of fear within him collided violently with the fusion of anger and determination that had been brewing. What do you want, Tony? Anton drawled, a predatory grin etched across his features. The casual dismissal felt like gravel scraping against his ego, dredging up all the years of resentment that Tony had allowed to fester. His voice, however, emerged steady. I'm done living in your shadow. You can't control me anymore. The words were bold, striking like a clenched fist. Anton's expression shifted, amusement giving way to a cold calculation. And what makes you think you have the power to walk away? You're nothing without me, kid. You'll always be my pawn. Tony felt a flicker of doubt but smothered it before it could spread. No. I see it clearly now. You may have used me, but I refuse to be used any longer. With that, the room seemed to hold its breath, all eyes focused on the confrontation that had arisen. Glaring at Anton, he found clarity flooding his thoughts. It was as if with every word he spoke, a piece of the past fell away, stripping him of the weight he'd carried for too long. Facing down the monster he had feared was forcing him to delve deeper into the heart of who he truly wanted to be. Anton leaned back, a smile creeping across his lips, this time tinged with vicious intrigue. You're going to regret this, Tony. You don't know the consequences of defying me. Regret is something I'll have to live with, Tony replied, a surprising calmness emanating from within. But I'll never forgive myself for staying silent any longer. The tension in the room thickened, a palpable electricity crackling as they stared each other down. In that instant, Tony recognized a shift within himself, born from the ashes of his tangled history with Anton. This wasn't merely a confrontation, it was liberation. The thrill of standing tall against the very person who had tried to define him now coursed through his veins like fire. With every moment that passed, the reality of what he was doing crystallized into a single truth: he was becoming the architect of his own life. But as he turned to leave to reclaim the pieces of himself that had faltered, a surge of anxiety gripped his chest. Was he truly prepared for the fallout that would inevitably follow? Would Anton allow him to walk away unscathed, or would this be the beginning of a war he was still ill-prepared for? The moment hung in the air, thickening like fog before dawn. The stakes were higher now, and Tony could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him even as he took a step toward freedom. Would he emerge from this confrontation victorious, or would the demons of his past come crashing in, forcing him to reckon not just with Anton, but with the true depths of his own transformation? The answers remained uncertain as Tony crossed the threshold of the bar, every pulse of his heartbeat echoing the possibility of either his downfall or unexpected resurgence. As Tony stepped into the frigid night air, the bar's oppressive ambience faded behind him, replaced by the cacophony of the bustling city. The confrontation distanced him from his old life, but the taste of liberation was bittersweet. The thrill of emancipation battled the anxiety gnawing at him. Had his words truly severed the ties binding him to Anton, or was it merely a prelude to deeper conflict? He paused at the edge of the sidewalk, the neon lights flickering like a reflection of his turbulent thoughts. Anxiety thrummed through every fiber of his being, but amid that uncertainty, a strong resolve began to form. The moment he had spoken out had ignited something within him, revealing a fire that he hadn't known existed. For the first time, the fear of Anton's response felt manageable. Maybe this wasn't just a battle, it was a necessary step towards something greater. With an unexpected determination replacing his hesitation, Tony decided to create a plan. He needed to loop in Mia, not just as a supporter but as a confidant. Their last conversation had ignited a spark, and she deserved to know how pivotal this moment had been. But he also worried about dragging her into his mess. What if Anton retaliated against her? The battle ahead was going to be complex, and partners had a way of becoming collateral damage in feuds like this. He pulled out his phone, staring at Mia's encouraging words. They weren't just a lifeline, they were a promise that he'd embraced transformation. His fingers hovered over the screen, contemplating how much to say. Divulging everything could be dangerous, but she wouldn't appreciate being left in the dark. Instead of retracting his earlier confidence, Tony decided now was the time for complete transparency. Mia, he typed, I confronted Anton. I'm done letting him control me. His heart raced as he pressed send, feeling exposed yet empowered. The response came back almost instantaneously. Did he threaten you? Where are you? The concern in her words tightened his chest. He didn't want to place her in a position of worry, but he also understood that this transformation was as important for her as it was for him. I'm okay. I left. But I know this isn't over, he replied, adding a cautious, "We need to talk." Making his way to the small park they frequented felt like traversing uncharted territory. Each step was a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The somber trees loomed overhead, and the ground crunched beneath his shoes, reverberating the fear he had just cast aside. It was time to own his newfound sense of self, no longer a pawn, but a player in his own narrative. As he sat on their usual bench, his mind raced through what lay ahead. The fight wasn't just with Anton, it was against the version of himself that had allowed Anton to dictate his path for so long. This confrontation had sparked a trajectory toward growth. Now, he needed to harness that momentum, to harness his fears into something constructive. Mia arrived moments later, her brow knitted with concern. "You really stood up to him?" she asked, searching his face for signs of wavering. "He needs to understand that I'm not afraid anymore." "But the cost is worth it if you're willing to fight for who you want to be," she interrupted, the strength in her voice igniting a spark within him. As Tony began to explain his feelings and ambitions, articulating the dissatisfaction that had consumed him for years, he noticed how his words started to flow more naturally. How liberating it felt to articulate his vision for his life, one where he would no longer allow the shadows of Anton to dominate his decisions. Mia listened intently, her eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and concern. "You're not backing down, are you? You're ready for what's next?" "I am," he affirmed, realizing that this was more than just a personal battle, it was also about the potential relationship he couldn't ignore. Her presence became a cornerstone of his resolve. Yet, lurking in the background was the residual fear of what Anton might do in response. And for that reason, Tony's determination intensified. With Mia by his side, he felt fortified, but the instinctual worry about Anton's next move loomed large. Would stepping up only escalate the confrontation into something more dangerous? The streets felt colder as he embraced that reality. The next phase of his transformation was about to unfold. Facing Anton had merely been the catalyst, but now he had to delve deeper into the mechanics of his newfound courage, prepare himself for Anton's retaliation, and discover the depths of his own ambition. Little did he know that this journey wasn't just about confronting fear, it would soon unravel insights into both love and betrayal, testing everything he thought he knew about himself. As they stood together, the weight of impending conflict heavy in the air, Tony realized that in order to step into this new chapter, he needed to brace himself for the unexpected storm ahead. The anticipation clawed at his insides, stirring a mix of excitement and dread that felt alive. What would Anton unleash when he learned that Tony was no longer under his thumb? In one resolute moment, he breathed in the chill, ready to embrace not just the fight against Anton, but the deeper revelations waiting to be uncovered within himself and with Mia. Ready or not, the next challenge loomed on the horizon, and he was prepared to face it head-on. Would those revelations lead to empowerment or devastation? Only time would tell. As Tony sat on the bench, the crisp night air filled with a mix of uncertainty and exhilaration, he felt the tension coiling in his chest. This moment marked more than just a confrontation, it heralded the beginning of his newfound journey. Tony understood that mastering his self-confidence meant confronting the very things he had allowed to undermine him for so long. Mia's presence next to him felt like an anchor. The soft glow from a nearby street lamp illuminated her face, contrasting with the darkness surrounding them. He could see the concern etched in her features, and for the first time, he wanted to share not just his fears but also his budding ambitions. "You know," he started, voice tentative yet charged, "this isn't just about Anton. It's about reclaiming my own narrative." Mia nodded, her expression a mix of understanding and curiosity. "What does that look like for you? How are you going to do that?" The question forced Tony to reflect deeply. "I've spent so much time running, hiding from consequences," he admitted. "It's time to confront not just Anton, but also the reasons I let him control me. I need to redefine my choices, find power in my vulnerability rather than fear it." Mia leaned closer, her interest piqued. "What does that mean in action? Are you planning to confront him again? Because that could get messy." Tony pondered the thought. Confronting Anton was undoubtedly imperative, but even more crucial was developing the tools to fortify himself against whatever retaliation came next. It means preparing. I need to think strategically about my career, my relationships, and my interactions with Anton, he replied, a hint of resolve hardening in his voice. Following the conviction in his heart, Tony pulled out his phone and began jotting down thoughts, goals, strengths he hadn't yet recognized, and potential allies he could bring into this fight. This wasn't merely about establishing boundaries. It was about building a foundation on which he could thrive. Have you thought about what you want professionally? Mia interrupted his thoughts, helping him refocus. You can't just only fight against Anton and leave that part behind. What do you want to do? Tony felt a flicker of clarity. He had been so preoccupied with the threats looming over him that the vision for his future had diminished. I love working with my hands. I've always found satisfaction in craftsmanship. Maybe it's time I chase that dream again, find a way to channel my energy into creating something meaningful. Mia's eyes sparkled with encouragement. You have talent, Tony. Harness that energy. Use it as a shield against everything else going on. Her words resonated. They awakened something inside him that had remained dormant for far too long. Craftsmanship was not merely a career path, it was a lifeline, an avenue through which he could express his identity independently of Anton's influence. How do you balance that with everything else? He mused, suddenly aware of how essential finding moments of personal fulfillment could be in this battle. It's about allocation of time. Set boundaries. Don't let work consume every waking hour. Embrace that passion. It's just as important as facing Anton, Mia suggested, firm and pragmatic. The cold air around them solidified, yet the darkness felt less suffocating now. As Tony envisioned hammering nails and chiseling wood, he became aware that even though challenges would come, Anton was bound to react. He could wield this craft as a source of strength. Realizing he had the ability to redirect his anxiety into productivity felt liberating. He saw the fight against Anton morph into a more extensive struggle for autonomy over all parts of his life. The deeper he dove into this juxtaposition of personal and professional liberation, the more clarity sparked within him. But the shadows of potential confrontation with Anton lurked at the edges of his thoughts. Would this newfound dream and his relationship with Mia withstand whatever storm Anton would unleash? Just as the feeling of empowerment welled inside him, a pang of apprehension gripped his heart. Next time we meet, it's going to be different, and I need to be ready, Tony decided aloud, commitment filling his voice. Yes, but stay aware, Tony. You can't let your guard down. He'll come for you, Mia replied solemnly, tension returning to the space between them. The chill in the air returned, and the sense of duality, creation versus destruction, loomed large. As anticipation heightened within him, Tony recognized that preparing for Anton's likely retaliation had become not just a necessity, but a vital aspect of his metamorphosis. For a moment, he was enveloped by doubt. Would his efforts be enough? But then the thought of pursuing his dreams steadied his resolve once more. He knew he needed to dig deep, to discover resources within himself he had long buried. As they walked away from the park, both tone and distance shifting, the sense of a heavier resolve ignited once more. Tony realized that before he could fully break ties with Anton, he needed to identify what truly empowered him. What skills were hidden within him, waiting to be used? And with that thought emboldened, he sensed an undercurrent of change preparing to swell, as if life itself were gearing up for the next chapter. A conflict was about to burst, not just with Anton, but with everything Tony still feared about himself. Would his ambitions finally overpower his past, or would the echo of his old self drag him back into the abyss? The truth was waiting just around the corner. In the days that followed, Tony approached his craft with a fervor he hadn't known since he was a child. He found himself immersed in woodwork, feeling the grain under his fingertips and the weight of the tools resting securely in his hands. Each cut, each bevel, became not just a task, but a ritual of both creation and healing. The workshop echoed his determination as he transformed raw materials into pieces that bore not just form but a piece of his soul. Each evening, he dedicated time to refining his skills. He watched videos, read books on craftsmanship, and spent hours experimenting in the cramped space of his garage. As wood shavings collected around him, he discovered the profound satisfaction of producing tangible results that were devoid of Anton's shadows. It was liberating, a manifestation of the power he sought to reclaim. But the calls from Mia pushed him further. "What are you making this weekend?" she would ask excitedly, urging him to exhibit his work at local markets. "You need to show others what you can do," she insisted. The excitement in her voice compelled him, engendering a steadiness he never expected. In those moments of encouragement, he glimpsed the dawn of a new identity: an artist, a craftsman, a man with passion. Yet, even amidst this burgeoning creativity, doubt still had its claw-like grip on his heart. He became increasingly aware of the looming presence of Anton. Each day felt like a countdown, and a visceral anxiety nagged at him. Would his newfound aspirations withstand the inevitable clash? In quiet moments alone, Tony confronted this fear. He recognized that, while confronting Anton would not obliterate his ambitions, succumbing to fear would. With each piece he created, he memorized the technicalities of his art, becoming not just a craftsman, but a formidable force ready to anchor himself against any storm that might come. One Sunday afternoon, with sunlight spilling generously through the workshop window, Tony crafted a small, intricately carved table. It was his most ambitious design yet, a piece that told a story of transformation. Etched into one of the legs were subtle motifs of struggle, snarling waves and rising suns representing his journey from darkness into light. This table symbolized not just a project but the shift in his core. He intended to take it to the upcoming weekend market, nervously contemplating how to present this part of himself to the world. Mia visited that day, her spirit radiating with excitement. "This is incredible, Tony. You've really captured something here. Are you ready to show it off?" Her enthusiasm felt like fuel to his flames, drawing out the uncertainty that clung to him. But in his heart, a familiar tension lingered, even as he attempted to project confidence. "Ready? I want to be, but what if," he faltered, gripping the edges of the table. "What if Anton shows up?" Mia's expression softened with a seriousness that complemented her usual vibrancy. "Then you confront him, just like you're doing with yourself. This table is as much a part of you as your fight against him. If he comes, you'll show him you won't be intimidated anymore." Her words struck a chord deep within Tony, amplifying the resonance of his growing ambition and resolve. Perhaps it was time to calibrate his vision of confrontation, not merely chaos but as a pivotal juncture of transformation. He recognized that every facet of his journey served as a foundation for the upcoming face-off. As the market approached, excitement contended with fear, sprouting doubts that conflicted with the ideals he'd begun to carve into his life. The night before the event, he lay awake, the table casting a long shadow, reminding him that he was on the brink of rising or falling into the old patterns he fought so fiercely to overcome. The moment held profound implications, one that hinged on more than just a skill show. His sense of self would be laid bare beneath Anton's scrutiny. There was no turning back. He had embraced this new path, and now, it was time to either mark his growth or risk being dragged back into the depths from which he had just begun to escape. With the dawn nearing, Tony sat up, steeling himself for the inevitable. The thought echoed in his mind: the time had come not just to showcase his work, but to face the adversary of his past head-on. He felt the weight of responsibility not only to himself but to the burgeoning life he hoped to lead. Would he claim this new identity with the strength it demanded, or would Anton's presence fracture the progress he had so painfully forged? The answer felt tantalizingly close, yet terrifyingly enigmatic. Tomorrow would serve as an inflection point in his life that promised to propel him either towards empowerment or where he feared lingering shadows still dwelled. As his heartbeat drummed loudly against the silence of the night, Tony knew he stood at the precipice of revelation. Tomorrow would not merely be a showcase, but a testament to his own evolution. The morning sun crept into the workshop, casting long rays that danced across the intricately carved table. Tony's heart raced. The day had finally arrived. He could feel the anticipation swirling within him, intertwining with a simmering anxiety as he prepared to step into the public eye for the first time as an artist. As he meticulously polished the table, each stroke was an invocation of hope, signaling his desire to present not just a woodworking piece but an embodiment of his journey. This table represented challenge and victory, each curve whispering stories of resilience. However, the gnawing fear of Anton's potential appearance loomed larger in his mind with each passing moment. Mia arrived just as he was placing the finishing touches. Her bright smile was infectious, a lighthouse guiding him through a turbulent ocean of emotions. "It looks amazing, Tony. You should feel proud. This is the start of something great." "Do you really think so?" He leaned against the workbench, forced confidence battling the voice inside his head. "What if people don't understand?" "They will. This isn't just wood, it's your voice," she said, eyes sparkling with conviction. In that moment, he found solace in her acceptance. Their connection ignited within him a flicker of courage. Yet, the specter of Anton still hovered, taunting him with doubt. How would he confront the turmoil that had shadowed his life for so long? As they loaded the table into the back of Mia's car, a gust of wind stirred nearby leaves, suddenly reminding him of the fleeting nature of life. He could either hold on to the pain of his past or choose to embrace transformation. The choice felt monumental. The path to the market was marked by an undeniable tension. Each turn brought Tony closer to potentially facing his fears. Mia chatted animatedly about the other artisans they would meet, but Tony could barely absorb her enthusiasm. Instead, his mind played out scenarios, a series of confrontations both hopeful and disastrous. Upon arrival, the vibrant energy of the market greeted them like an electric jolt. The air buzzed with laughter and chatter, colors danced around him, yet all Tony felt was the weight of anticipation. What would it be like to stand among these creative souls and share his story? With every step, he convinced himself that sharing his art meant unleashing a part of his essence he had kept locked away for far too long. As they set up, he could hear snippets of conversations around him: a woman discussing a crafted chair, a man demonstrating a precision tool. Each moment filled him with a strange mix of aspiration and inadequacy. What if Anton tainted this experience with ridicule? What if he wasn't enough? "Tony, you're ready," Mia urged, placing her hand on his arm. Her touch tethered him, pulling him back from the brink of self-doubt. He took a deep breath and surveyed his surroundings, noting how others embraced their vulnerabilities, sharing their art and passions. Perhaps there was strength in authenticity, just as he had begun to understand in his craft. "Okay," he whispered to himself, heart pounding. "Let us do this." As he moved toward their display, he locked eyes on a couple nearby, genuinely admiring a wooden sculpture. A pulse of energy surged through him. Suddenly, he felt a part of something larger, a community celebrated for its creations. He arranged the table with care, allowing it to shine in the sunlight, its story lingering in the air. But just as he began to process the warmth of acceptance, he spotted a familiar figure at the far end of the market. Anton stood, an imposing silhouette against the lively backdrop, scanning the scene with an inscrutable expression. Panic gripped Tony's heart. The moment that had promised empowerment now threatened to unravel everything he had worked so hard to build. Would he stand his ground or allow the specter of his past to swallow him whole? With every fiber of his being, Tony understood this was no longer just about artistry, it became a reckoning. The time had come to anchor himself into the very life he sought. Would he lean into the fear or rise above it? As Anton approached, the question crackled in the air between them: would this be a confrontation of despair, or perhaps, a confrontation that would define his newfound resolve? Tony's heart raced as he locked eyes with Anton, the tension between them palpable. Every ounce of fear that had crept in since that fateful encounter in the alley surged back, threatening to pull him into the abyss he had just started to escape. With people passing by, Tony felt exposed, like he was standing on a tightrope above a pit of lions. But this wasn't just about him, it was about the new life he had chosen, sculpted piece by piece, just like the wood he decarved. "Look who it is," Anton drawled, his trademark smugness dripping from every word. The carpenter turned artist. "How quaint. You really think you can play with the big boys now?" For a split second, Tony felt his composure waver under Anton's scrutiny. But then he took a deep breath. This was it. He had spent too long allowing Anton's voice to fill the empty spaces in his mind. "I'm not playing, Anton. I'm claiming what's mine, and that includes my future," Tony declared, the words spilling out with a newfound certainty. You don't dictate my life anymore. The vibrancy of the market seemed to hush, visitors casting glances towards the unfolding drama as if they were watching a high-stakes play. Still, his mind fogged with uncertainty. Could he maintain this momentum, this commitment to his new identity? Oh really? Anton stepped closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a sinister secret. You think carving wood will protect you from the reality of who you are? You can't escape the past, Tony. It's written on your skin. Fury ignited within Tony, a blaze that pushed back against the fear that threatened to envelop him. Each part of his journey had laid the groundwork for this confrontation. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with the anticipation of finally confronting this legacy that had bound him for so long. I'm not running anymore, he asserted, louder this time, surprising even himself. I'm building. I'm creating. This table, the work I've done, it represents the fight against men who hide behind fear and manipulation to control others. I choose to stand tall in the light. Light? Anton's laughter resonated harshly against the colorful backdrop of the market. You think what you're doing here is courageous? You're a coward hiding behind your craft. What will it take for you to understand? Look around you, everyone will crumble when the real challenge arrives. In that moment, the electric atmosphere of the market steadied Tony. He glanced beyond Anton, taking in the vibrant booths, the laughter of children, the families gathered in celebration of artistry and community. He saw Mia, watching him from their booth, her expression one of unwavering faith. Her encouraging smile ignited the candle of courage within him. He didn't just want to be a figure drowned in darkness anymore. He wanted to embrace the light, not just for himself but for her as well. I am not a coward, he replied, his voice resonating with conviction. And I'm not just here to make pretty things. I want to build a future, one that stands on integrity instead of fear. So if that means confronting you, then bring it on. The energy from the crowd shifted, murmurs rising like soft waves, the audience caught between enduring history and an unfolding transformation. Anton's smirk faltered as disbelief flitted across his face. But Tony held his ground, steady and resolute. You may have had a hold on my past, Anton, but I am the architect of my own future now. At the end of the day, you'll regret this, Anton hissed, eyes narrowing with disdain as he turned to leave. You can't write a new story while still tethered to the old one. Watch me, Tony shot back, the fire of determination suffusing his voice. As Anton withdrew, Tony felt a tidal wave of liberation crash over him. The fears that had threatened to consume him faded into distant echoes, and the weight of allowing himself to be measured against Anton's standards lifted. Mia rushed to his side, her eyes sparkling with pride and admiration. That was amazing, Tony. You stood tall. For the first time in years, he felt truly powerful, not because of fear, but through authenticity. The essence of his craft was intrinsically tied to who he was becoming. It symbolized his transformation from darkness to light. With the market buzzing around them, Tony realized this was just the beginning. He was committed not only to creating beautiful things but also to cultivating a life rooted in authenticity and courage. The room swelled with new possibilities, and he felt tingles of excitement at the thought of future endeavors exhibiting his work, spreading his vision of empowerment through his craft. As he took a step back to observe his table, adorned with the fruits of his labor, the powerful realization hit him. It wasn't just craftsmanship that he had nurtured, it was an embodiment of his rebirth. Tony! Mia exclaimed. Look, people are coming over. As visitors began to appreciate and comment on his work, admiration danced in their eyes. In that moment, he understood that this expression was indeed part of something larger than himself. He had risen from the shadows, his past no longer an anchor but a source of strength. And he was ready to verify it, day by day, project by project. What's next? Mia asked, beaming at him with pride. Tony looked around, his eyes gleaming with newfound passion. I'll continue creating, but I'm also going to mentor others, help them find their own voice. Let us turn this into a platform for growth. From that moment on, no longer bound by Anton's influence, Tony embraced the journey with solid confidence and an established position in the world. He had conquered more than just Anton. He had proven to himself that true power comes from authenticity, vulnerability, and resilience. With the sun setting on the market, casting beautiful golden hues, Tony smiled, knowing he had definitively stepped into the light. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share the journey of transformation.